Thanks very much and good afternoon, and welcome to the panel session entitled Bridging the Gap Between Offline and Online Marketing. As noted, my name is Jim Norton. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Flowcode, and I'll be joined momentarily by Ryan Morris, who is the Regional Product Training Developer at BMW University within BMW North America. And it's great to be with everyone at OAAA. Just what we're going to get into here is we're just going to talk about the consumer interactions in the offline world and how that relates to the digital world. And as we all know, post-pandemic, as the world begins to open up, those offline interactions and engagements between brands and consumers are more important than ever. I'm the CRO of Flowcode. Flowcode is, our mission is to bridge the gap between the offline world and the online world through next generation QR code technology, all built on a very rich data and analytics platform. And it's really meant to, one, help consumers to connect directly with brands through instant, seamless, and friction-free use of QR codes. But then for brands and businesses to really understand offline engagement touch points and what resonates with consumers, whether it be in front of media, in-store interactions, and in the case of BMW, what does that look like on the showroom floor? So without further ado, Ryan Morris, welcome to the panel, and thanks for joining us here at OAAA. We're delighted to have you with us. Ryan's been a client of Flowcode for the last several years, but Ryan, why don't you just take a couple of moments and introduce yourself and tell you what you guys are up to at BMW North America.
Sure, thanks, Jim. Yeah, QR codes has been a great addition to our toolkit at BMW, not only for what we do at Group University, but it's spilled over into our consumer side as well. And what we found as part of our initial explorations with QR codes is that we wanted to have a way to host media and to do some analytics like you mentioned, Jim. And that kind of snowballed into involvement with the BMW Accelerator program, which really boosted us and got us really into the game of QR codes and really got us involved with obviously with Flowcode and what you guys had going on for sure.
Yeah, terrific. Certainly things have accelerated very quickly, no pun intended, or certainly pun intended. But I mean, Ryan, I think it's important to note here, you're a lifelong auto guy, right? Starting off as a lot attendant at BMW many, many years ago. Can you just kind of talk about kind of your journey through the automotive industry? It's always good to give that context.
Yeah, it's interesting coming from an enthusiast background. I was a fan before I was ever, really an employee, and I'll date myself a little bit. That was way back in the 80s, back in the analog days. So to see the transformation of that customer experience, especially from then to now, has been very exciting. So about 7 years ago, I started this kind of new career with BMW and developing these trainings. And it really became an interesting opportunity to integrate some tools like you guys have at Flowcode.
Yeah, and I know one of the events that many of the attendees may be very familiar with is the BMW Driving Experience. I know you were at CES a couple of years ago. That's become a wildly popular event for people to see, feel, smell, touch BMWs in a performance environment. Can you just talk a little bit about the driving experience and what that looks like, not only previously, but how are you thinking about that going forward?
Yeah, we saw an opportunity with the Ultimate Driving Experience to not only serve our customers, but to also serve our employees at the dealership level. And we looked at it as an opportunity to have a training experience as well to the driving experience. And before the pandemic, that would generally involve handout materials and things like that. Obviously, that changed quite a bit with the pandemic, and we were looking for a touchless way to distribute that information. And that's where we came across the QR codes, where we looked at them as almost a little extra gold nugget that you would find, and pick up along the way during the training. But also it allowed them to have a quick ability to snapshot the information on the screen and take it with them, as opposed to maybe getting a pamphlet and, who knows where that's going to end up. Once it's on your phone, though, in that camera roll, and that's the kind of the way we were doing in the beginning, before we got into flow pages, was to have an integrated, we're using this source and this source and this source and piecemealing it all together, which worked. But moving forward, we needed something a little bit more robust and a little bit more of a standalone platform. And that's where our relationship with you really kind of started to go along a similar path, and we were looking for a lot of the same things. So adding those little extra bits of surprise and delight to a training, or as we're seeing now, into that customer experience in the dealership where they're kind of picking up those little nuggets of information at their leisure, I guess you would say.
Yeah. No, I think the dealership element here is most important to note, because at the end of the day, it is still about showroom floor traffic, right? It's still about driving prospective automobile buyers onto the showroom floor. Could you just talk a little bit about some of the changes that you've seen in terms of customer expectations when they walk onto the floor of a showroom, and how has that changed? And what are your thoughts about the, post-pandemic in-person auto sales?
I think the biggest part is with all the information available now, not only from BMW and from our website, but from outside resources as well. The power has shifted a little bit more to the customer, where they have all this information. They're coming in much more prepared. So we've moved away from the client advisor being the hero, right, with all this information, to the client being the hero. And we're kind of their guide along their customer journey. And that's where it really becomes interesting with the QR codes and the associated information that way, is that they're not getting a hard sell. They're getting information relevant to what they want, how they want, and it just becomes an extra tool for them. And it also can form a kind of a bridge between the customer and the client advisor, because it's a very transparent type relationship with the information. Nothing's being held back. And it just really eases that that relationship, and can also help the client advisors, especially, as you know, after the pandemic, there's been a lot of turnover. So we have a lot of new client advisors coming in, so they can speak with a more unified voice. They're not guessing about a feature or function of something. With the QR code, they could scan and potentially get that information much, much easier. So it's a win-win on both sides for the customer and the client advisor.
Yeah, one of our goals at Flowcode, as you know, Ryan, and know well, is to allow consumers to connect directly with a brand source of information. Right. And, do it in a seamless and friction-free way. And, you're an excellent case study in how you've been able to do that. But I'd love to really get into the tactics of how you're doing this at the dealership level. What are the ways in which you are using Flowcode on showroom vehicles, and what does that, how has that been received by the prospective auto buyers?
Yeah, we've had a couple kind of evolutionary steps. Early on, there was more stickers on the car than we would probably want to see in a.
And that's a Flowcode sticker, right? That's actually the Flowcode itself,
exactly,
strategically placed on the vehicle, right?
Right, and I think that what we wanted to avoid is having cars ended up that looked like ladybugs, right, where they had the stickers all over them. And so FlowPage helped us consolidate that down a little bit. But I think for the customer going in, we almost look at it as a self-exploration of an exhibit, like you'd see at a museum, where there's a little bit of setup materials, the aim, tap, scan type signage to guide people to the flow codes, because we have heard comments that they look so good that sometimes people overlook them as being a QR code with all the designs and full color printing that we do. So I think that setup is really important. So when they get into the showroom, they can have an expectation of, oh, if a QR code is on a vehicle, it's going to be a fun fact about the car. Or as I get over to finance, for example, and they have some QR codes maybe on some integrated in some signage or something like that, they know that that's somewhere that they can look for vetted information or official information from BMW about, it could be a financial services product, it could be insurance product or something like that. Again, just transparent, so they're not feeling when they get into the finance office that they have a hard sell on something that maybe is unexpected or that they weren't planning on looking at originally. It's more on their terms, and I think that results in a happier customer, and I think we've all known that happy customers generally part with their money a little bit easier. So those are things that we want them to spend more money, but we also wanted to do it on their terms, so they're still happy at the end.
Right. Ryan, you made a comment to me a while back that you have a thesis that the pandemic may be the death of the dealer sales brochure, right? And, one of the things that we've worked closely on is our product called Flowpage. And Flowpage is a fast loading mobile landing page that allows you as a brand to be able to essentially list a directory of digital links that are relevant to either that model, to that particular dealership. You've done a lot of great experimenting with flow pages, and one of the things I did want to ask you about is and you've already mentioned this, is within the financial services end of it. And we think about those add-on sales that are so important, whether it be wheel and tire or financing options. Can you just talk a little bit about how that did? Because that really was the genesis for the program, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was, we had one of our partners at Financial Services visited our event in Los Angeles, loved the idea, and was actually the person that directed us towards the accelerator program. And it's been a great addition to that team as well. I think on financial services is that sometimes those products are misunderstood by the customer. We generally do have good information, but it's not always within that kind of 3-link or 3-click type information architecture that we always look for. So it can be a little bit embedded in the website, and the QR codes or flow code and the flow page gives you the ability to kind of pull that to the forefront. So let's say tire and wheel package, one of the great explainers of that program that shows examples of how it can help is a video that might not be easy to find within our website. So if you can pull that right up to the front for the customer, that really makes it easy for them because it gets the information they need, and it can help the financial services person have that added pitch without being a hard sell to the customer, which nobody likes these days. Nobody wants to be hard sold. And the goes hand in hand with our ongoing elimination of printed materials. We want to limit printed materials not only for compliance because it can be outdated so quickly, but also from our standpoint at BMW, any way that we can limit CO2 emissions, excess printing, our environmental impact as a whole is a win as well. So that's one of the things that we looked at when we pushed this idea forward, is it's not just about facts and figures and closing ratios and all that kind of thing. It's about making it better for everybody, whether it's an environmental side or a customer side or anything like that. So it all works together.
Yeah, we think a lot about the sustainability and environmental impact that you can have, when you're moving from a physical in real life scenario to digital very seamlessly without paper, right? One other element I wanted to address with you, Ryan, is, purchasing an auto, especially a luxury automobile. It's really the ultimate out-of-home experience, right? You already mentioned ultimate driving experience and actually being able to experience the car, but also at the dealership. But you've actually thought about how can you connect with your prospective car buyers even beyond the dealership, right? And what are the ways in which you can use Flowcode, whether it be in direct mail or certainly out-of-home advertising? And considering we're at OAAA, would love to get some of your thoughts about how are you thinking about using Flowcode within your out-of-home advertising strategy?
Well, I think one of the amazing things, one of my coworkers that's down in the Southwest sent me a picture recently. He's worked on the QR code project with us for a while. And I think it was outside Las Vegas. He saw a billboard that the entire billboard was just a giant QR code, no text, no anything like that. Obviously, that's an extreme example, but on that type of signage, it does give it extra legs, right? It gives it an extra bit of information you can pull out of there, but also with some of the features of Flowcode with the back-end rules where you could have a poster, for example, about a product that is a ways out from official launch, and you could have it refresh in the background. So every time, maybe it's at a bus stop or at a billboard or a street sign or something like that, every time they go by that, they have the opportunity to scan it, and maybe there's something new. every time. So same poster, same code, but in those back-end rules to be able to add some of that surprise and delight, which we like to share with our customers, that's something that's very new. And it also, the back-end controls of being able to update material for compliance as rates change or offers change or something like that. It does eliminate the wasting of printed material and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that we're looking at using it. And it's one of those things that it's like almost every day when you talk to somebody new within our organization, which is, international, of course, there's some new opportunity or some new idea that somebody comes up with of how we could apply the technology you guys are developing.
Yeah, you highlight one of the great features that we have is just the fact that all of our codes are dynamic, right? You can print the code once, update the destination as to where that code scans to an infinite number of times. And it's really one of the things that we're focused on is, how can we use our features to help brands develop these alternative use cases? You already mentioned, how do you move from financing rates to feature tutorials to even sign up for a test drive, right? From, the comfort of a bus stop out a home ad, if you will, right? Well, Ryan, we're coming down to the last few minutes. Would love to get your broad thoughts, as we enter this post-pandemic world around consumer expectations in the dealership, and really if you can share any things you're excited about at BMW, especially, BMW is one of the great global brands, and, what started as a small project here in the US has really blossomed into something much bigger. But would love it if you could just hit on a couple of those, if you don't mind, and we can wrap.
I think for me, having started as just a regular old user on my consumer
That's right. You logged into flowcode.com yourself and started your own account before you got to us. So
yeah. So starting with that, I think is a good representation of, we've been talking a lot about big picture, in the dealer, global rollouts and all these kind of things, but we have a lot of stakeholders within BMW that operate on a smaller level as well. Look at Rolls-Royce for an example. They do a lot of bespoke type one-to-one marketing. Motorrad, our motorcycle division, is also more limited real estate, right? You can pack a lot of information onto one sticker on a motorcycle or QR code that we haven't had before. So I would encourage people that it's not just about gigantic big picture type stuff. It's also down to that individual user. And I think it really highlights the agility of the platform, where you can roll something out on a whim or in response to something you see happening in the market, and it can be rolled out very, very quickly. And I think that is a really important aspect, not only for a big company, but also for an individual user. Even an individual client advisor at one of our dealerships could subscribe on their own, and I think use it very effectively with their own portfolio of customers. So that I think is the beauty. It works across the spectrum for big users, small users, and everything in between. So I think that's kind of the missing piece that I would want people to say is that you don't have to be a giant corporation to utilize Flowcode.
Yeah. No, and I think, look, at the end of the day, it does come down to a interaction between a prospective buyer and a sales associate, right? And how can you improve that experience? And what I love overall is just, how BMW is really rethinking the car buying experience, and, what you've been able to do through the use of Flowcode, among other initiatives that you have. But, the combination of Flowcode, Flowpage, recognition that the consumer is in control, right? They come in with more information than they ever have, and that's not going away. But how can you as BMW and your dealer network continue to embrace the fact that there's this thirst for information about a vehicle, whatever feature, function it is, or and what you've been able to do to enhance the car buying experience. So Ryan, thanks for being a terrific Flowcode partner. Love what we're doing together. I know we're just getting started. And big thanks to OAAA for inviting us to host this panel. I think this is a lot of great learnings for a very, very important category for the out-of-home industry. So that's it for Bridging the Gap between offline and online marketing. I'm Jim Norton. You can visit us at flowcode.com to get more information. And thanks again.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, OAAA.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.